You look attentive right now. Hi, guys. Okay. All right. So, just got to say this right off the bat. Anytime I ever talk about money, or anything in the way of financial stuff, it's never meant to be advice. Anytime I talk about money or stocks or anything like that, it's never meant to be advice or even construed as advice. It's just what I do, what I'm doing in my own journey, my own financial journey, as many call it. So anything I say is not financial advice. I would not follow my advice anyway, and I'm not a licensed financial planner or broker or anybody like that. Okay, it's just me talking about what I like to do in my financial journey. And so the way I plan on winning this battle is I have my system aggregated. So, if everybody went back to 2008, I was against the stock markets, and I was against ETFs and index funds and all that stuff. So I was all about preparation and security for a economic collapse. Then I moved into making knives, which is just a reboot because I was already into making knives far back as 2000. Year 2000. Yeah, the year 2000 actually is when I took an interest and started to get my first equipment making knives. And so 2006 was when I got my Baader B3. But it isn't going to be, the way I plan on winning isn't going to be me making this like one-off stuff and selling it at shows and appealing to certain tastes and markets and communities and things like that. It's going to be me. The way I plan on winning, I plan on winning through investing. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to invest. I'm going to invest my way to victory. And the reason why I picked investing and also buying things of value and then waiting and selling them at a higher price is because, to me, that's what's going to win the battle for me. And I'm talking, like, of course, selling, knickknacks and stuff like that on eBay. Of course, I mean that. But I'm talking about selling, shares on the market. And because there's no community to ostracize me. The stock market doesn't know who I am on the other end. There's no one there to boycott me. There's no one there to ostracize me. There's no one there to determine if I've been a good boy in the last 5 or 6 years and should we let him back in. Should we pay his dividends out? That all comes out. That already comes out. That comes out in my dividend reinvestment program, and it just automatically buys new fractional shares and puts them in my account. And that's how I plan on winning. That's how I plan on winning. So I have 2 Roth IRAs that I give to. I buy another platform that I'm on, that I buy like an ETF, exchange traded fund. I buy shares of that, and I just put it in and wait. And things may go up, things may go down, but it's how I plan on making it to the summit, making it to the top of the hill. There's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. The guy's last name was Klassen. And if I remember correctly, the book was roughly, if I remember right, I mean, I may be wrong, but if I remember right, the book was roughly based on a set of cuneiforms that were found in Mesopotamia or Iraq, and they talked about financial transactions, and the book was about the richest man in Babylon. And there used to be these kind of like halls, kind of like community halls, like pubs. They're like a pub. People can go drink and eat food, and then somebody would go and give. They would kind of float ideas and talk about things. You know, instead of people going watching TV or watching the ball game at a friend's house, they would meet at these places and pour a glass of honey mead or something, maybe. I don't know what they used to drink back then. And so everybody wanted to know the story of one of the men among them. And everybody would go to these things. And even some people that were maybe even in bondage and slavery would go to these things, which kind of an interesting angle. But everybody wanted to know the story of the man among them who was the richest man in Babylon. Babylon being an inherently capitalistic society, I don't know if that's accurate to say, was just dying to know, what's the secret of your success, sir? And he gave a story, and one of those stories was he had, at a certain point, he had actually wound up being a slave. And I'll be honest, I forgot how it wound up. I don't know if I remember if he was captured or whatever, but he wound up being placed into slavery. And he had gone ahead and there was a group of slaves with him. They were talking to him, saying, you got to sell yourself. You got to sell yourself to a equitable master, which is a lot like our modern society today. We have to sell ourselves to a equitable employer that will treat us fairly. And so, if not, he goes to work at the city walls, where he's certainly probably going to die. And so he talks a good game and gets bought by this baker. And so he began to bake for the baker, and the baker taught him how to bake. He learned a few recipes. He went ahead and asked the baker if he could buy flour and goods from him and use his oven to bake his own goods to go out amongst the people and sell in the open air market, so that he may have money to spend. And the baker said yes, which is actually probably much more equitable than some of these modern day bosses we have in some of these organizations today. I think. But so he began to make stuff to sell, and eventually he had went ahead and bought his own freedom. He eventually made enough money and bought his own freedom, and eventually was able to go free. But the lesson that he was taught that changed it for him was that once he spent his coppers, they went out into the world, never to be seen again. Once he spent it, it was gone. But if he began to treat his coppers like a slave, like slaves, and put them to work for him, his other coppers would have other little baby coppers, would have, that could also be put to work as like slaves for him also, that the copper was the slaves, and the other when the copper began to work for him, it would create little baby coppers, and then those little baby coppers would also grow up and create other little baby coppers, and that is a slave workforce of copper would eventually continue to work and eventually become silvers and eventually become golds. And I'll be honest, sometimes I can't wrap my mind around that concept still. Sometimes I'm like, well, how is this supposed to work again? But that's the strategy I'm taking. That's the strategy I'm taking to win this. It's because there may not be many options outside of that for me. I can't really ingratiate myself to an employer that well. I can't really ingratiate myself to a community to sell my goods. So perhaps for me, the real opportunities in the markets, crypto, stocks, and metals. And maybe the occasional knife sale comes along. The idea that I'm making these things that are assets, but assets that can be easily blackballed and deemed valueless. As to where my shares, nobody knows who's on the other end selling them. Nobody can blacklist me from selling my shares of Procter & Gamble, or my shares of Pepsi, or my shares of Dutch Brothers, or my shares of whatever I own, my shares of Realty Income Corp. So my strategy is, at least in the retirement, is part dividend, value, and in everyday use sort of things. I went with, for dividends, I went with Realty Income Corp, which is a real estate investment trust. And so I get a payout for that every month. I went in with another one called JEPI, which is, I think it's JP Morgan Premium Dividend Equity ETF, I forget, but the ticker symbol's JEPI. That's, I think, supposed to pay every month too. So I'm currently building that position. And my two permanent positions that I really never plan on selling is Pepsi. I started buying that when I first got into investing. And I've been investing very long. I've only been investing maybe about 4 years. And recently I got into Berkshire Hathaway, Class B, not the Class A. Class A's, I think, can any given trading day can run over $450,000 each, but the Class B's, I've been running those. You know, the paid in, the taxable in, I mean, I've been running, I've been doing Dutch Brothers. I've been doing Dollar Tree, if I remember right, AT&T, and Procter & Gamble. I got into NVIDIA for a little bit. Didn't really feel comfortable doing it. Got out. And once the cash settled, I went back to Procter & Gamble. So moved all my money back over to the Procter & Gamble. Then over on the other Roth, I have the Vanguard in. And I have a Vanguard account. And I'm running the VTSAX, which is the Vanguard Total Stock Market Fund, Admiral Shares, which is the index fund. And I'm running VPADX, which is the Vanguard Pacific Rim Index Fund. And I think, if I remember correctly, that is consistent of Oriental countries, Korea, Japan, also some of the other countries in Australia, due to it being specifically a Pacific Rim tracking index of Pacific Rim related industries. And people wondered why I did that. Well, it's going to sound kind of funny, but my theory was that I wanted something that focused on corporations in the Orient without necessarily going into China. So, in other words, corporations where there is an Oriental, Asian type work ethic, but just didn't necessarily tap into those Chinese companies or anything having to do with China. So I decided to kind of just put a little bit in there just to see what happens. But anyway, that's, and of course some cryptocurrencies. I have some cryptocurrencies too. So anyway, that's what I plan on. That's how I plan on winning this. I plan on moving up and getting back on the horse that way and getting ahead that way. So yeah, and I do also. I did have actually a very good return on older knife I sold that actually did remarkably well. And, it was very, very good. And so, that's what I do. That's how I kind of move and shake a bit. And that's how I sort of try to make my money. I try to keep it in a Roth IRA. And I can't understand why. I'll go into another video, but recently there's been a lot of talk in the news about some sort of governments wanting to deal with IRAs and wanting to deal with 401ks. Something about a retirement crisis. There's people who will pay into their future and honor their future selves. And there's some people that aren't into that. And they want the big jacked up pickup trucks, and they want the big house, and they want the credit card debt. Just because not everybody and their brother's necessarily into that, not everybody and their brother's disciplined enough to contribute their own money, and they want to rely on Social Security. Why does the government have to intervene on that? Why? They should just leave that alone. Another thing I can't ever figure out is what when people talk about people paying on unrealized gains. So in other words, because something I own goes up in value, I have to basically pay out in rent. I have to rent what I already own. I have to pay a tax on what I already own because it goes up in value. I never understood that concept either. But anyway, none of what I say is financial advice. And I went ahead and I am pretty much more likely long on a lot of those positions that I've talked about. I'm kind of in the pilot seat for a long time on those. My whole trading in and out and things like that. It was pretty decent when it was back in COVID. I remember I used to do pretty good on some. I used to do pretty good on cruise lines because cruise lines were up and down during COVID. Because news was so uncertain about cruise lines, but now it's kind of more or less stabilized for me. So anyway, just me kind of talk about how I plan on winning this race, and don't worry about the haters. Just let the haters worry about you. See you guys on the next one. Bye bye.